Hey everybody, before I forget, I guess this will be 27 part 6. I wasn't going to do a part 6, but I just remembered something I wanted to bring up. So anyway, about Japan and stuff, um, we're taught, and I think it's probably fact, that the Japanese people believe the emperor to be like a deity. And if you look at like North Korea, I believe they say Kim Jong-un's father, that there were supernatural things that happened when he was born, and they call him a son of God or something like that. And whether Kim thinks he's some kind of deity himself, I don't know. And I don't even know if that's totally true, if that's propaganda or what. But the point I wanted to make about is because over there that would play out, because most of them are Buddhist, and so they also believe in miracles just like Christians do, and just like all religions do believe in supernatural happenings that mean one thing or another. So there were certain things that happened when the Buddha was born, and that they used to prove that he's the Buddha. And so if certain things happened when these rulers were born, or whether they fudge it and say they happened, or there were things that happened and then they fudged their birth date to say, that happened when I was born, I have no idea. But the point is, if you go back to America's own history, there's supposed to be supernatural things that happened with George Washington and stuff, and having visions and things like this. So people around the world aren't that much different as far as how they come to be strongly patriotic or supportive, or what's the word? Not self-righteous, but to think that they have more clout in the world than, say, another nation does. So I wanted to point that out. And so there's been a lot of that down through history. Especially in times nations want to go to war and things like that. There's if you look at all the way, a lot of atheists and stuff, if there wasn't no religion, there wouldn't be no war. Wrong answer. Religion has been used for wars, yes. And whether those wars were just or unjust, our Maker will decide on all those. But it's plainly in the Quran how religion has been perverted, and how wars have been started on deception and stuff. But if you look at, it's they either use religion to as a purpose for war, or it's for greed and resources. Could be for border conflicts, could be for racist reasons. There's all sorts of reasons that wars happen, and the governments will use any motivation they can come up with to motivate the people to support a war. And propaganda, manipulation, lies, all those things go along with it. So that's another reason why I say you can't be naive. Technically, if you ask me, if we had a real war on drugs and stuff, like I said, we could confiscate every single damn thing, all the money and stuff, because they know, they watch that stuff. They know where money's going and trading hands and what banks it's going through in large sums and this and that, or like, you know, I'm sure them cartel guys have investment people and all that kind of, they know what they're invested in and all that. And if you want to get down to it, I'm sure we know where they live. You know, put a cruiser off the coast of Mexico and those other countries and lob a few cruise missiles, you know, right into their big old haciendas, and that's the end of them. Oh, well, then somebody else will take over. Well, then you knock them out too. You know, I'm not saying to let, you know, the drug dealers in this country and the little fish go, because there's a lot of violence that goes with them, and they're brutal because they want to make the money. But I'm saying, you know, all this time, you know, they go after a big fish here and there. Escobar, you got Chapo now, and a few others, and plus they kill each other and stuff and everything. But it's like, you know, they keep saying war on drugs, and it's like, well, do something then. All you're doing is you know, now you got these idiots wanting to legalize drugs, and man, there's going to be a lot of mental health issues, people with anxieties and all kinds of stuff coming down the pike from them legalizing marijuana and all this and everything. And any politician that supports that, you know, even the black politicians who say, look, there's unfair number of black males in prison because of that and blah blah blah, it's like, well, you know, then you need to do something about the police maybe arresting the whites and others, more of them for it then too, instead of saying, well, we got to let the black guys out for the drugs and stuff. Because most people, you know, I'm not talking about a cop bust a kid for smoking a joint or something. I don't think they go to prison for that. I'm pretty sure most people who are in prison for drugs were trafficking and dealing and stuff. So to make it out like, oh, it's just somebody who was doing, you know, smoking some dope weed, no, I think they were probably dealing or something, or they had some other charges and they pled to a lesser charge. So and really, I think that's the biggest reason why you see more African Americans in prison than the white people who do drugs, is because I think there's a larger portion of white people who do drugs that don't have prior rap sheets for other things and stuff. So when they get busted for it, it's just for the drugs itself. When they bust an African American for it, it's probably wanted on some other stuff, and you can say, well, if the system wasn't so skewed and stacked against them, they wouldn't have that other stuff against them too. That's a whole nother thing. I'm not denying that our justice system is messed up. I'm just saying going this route and legalizing it isn't the fix. It just isn't the fix. It's going to cause our country a whole lot more problems, you know. But they seem to be we seem to be going down the tubes faster and faster every year. That's why I say the next 20 years is crucial for this country, and we have to get the federal government under control, not only under foreign policy but domestic policy and our taxes, and start holding our Congress more accountable. And I think if you know, all the money wasn't going to Washington and it was going to our state governments, the larger portion, you know, and federal taxes were less than our state taxes. I'm not saying to boost state taxes way up there either. You know, once we reduce the federal, I'm saying we need to cut out a lot of crap and get it back into everything back under control, to where you know, people understand they have to be more self-reliant and not want all these programs and stuff. And I know there's certain things we need, like, for disabled people and stuff like that, but there's an awful lot of fluff out there that people are just getting rich off of, and these socialist ideas coming down the pike. The only offer in the mainstream, well, how are we going to deal with this? And we need medical coverage. Well, we'll do this system here or that system. And there's not enough debate on it to where, there's an answer, a resolution to it that doesn't involve the government taking more money and spending more money to try and fix something. It's like, I think, maybe people could set up their own accounts, medical accounts and things like that, and be taught in school, hey, these are things you're going to need to save up for. Maybe make it mandatory. So much out of each paycheck has to go into one of these accounts, just like they take, weekly for taxes. It goes into this account, and when you go to the doctor, that's what you use to pay your deductible or your insurance, or however you work it out. But it's your individual account. They're not going to take twice as much money so they can cover somebody else with what you earn. So there is, I'm sure, an answer to it all, in reducing the costs and stuff of insurance, and reducing the cost of medical treatment and these types of things and stuff, and making people more responsible. Because there's an awful lot of people who use the hospitals and services and like that, never have an intention of paying. And you look at these whether it's gang violence or other types of things that happen where people use the emergency room and stuff and everything. They ain't got no insurance. What happens to their bill? Who pays that bill? Because, and same with a lot of illegals. They go to the hospital, they got no intention of paying that bill. They got no intention at all. They ain't got no insurance, but the hospital can't refuse them. Can't refuse treatment if it's something, serious. And I'm sure they don't want to deal with the pressure right now of turning away, illegals or migrants and stuff like that. So, but I know there's answers out there. We can work out our problems without going to the extreme of socialism or going to the other extreme of the right there. We're just it's all about extreme capitalism. That's what I call it. Because there's nothing wrong with capitalism if it's done right and everyone's honest and do. But there's a lot wrong when the system is not kept in check, and then the corporations do everything they can to make a buck, and including hiring illegals, or even just people here on work visas. They even recruit them from other countries to keep wages down, and they make big profits, and the American citizens put out of a job. And I think that's one of the things Trump is doing right about trying to get jobs back here for those of us who our families have been here, we were born here, and etc. And so I don't think it's a race thing. I think he realizes, and he's heard enough, seen enough around the country to where he sees it's been taking the shaft. And even though he's rich, he realizes, whether you call them his buddies or not, they're on Wall Street and everything, they've been getting filthy rich, and the average American's having to work harder and harder just to own a home and make ends meet and stuff. And you know, regardless of what you think about his been said about his business practices and this and that and everything, you know, whether all that's true or not, I don't know. There's a lot, you know, but you have to go back, remember, you know, he's what, 70 or something like that. So, you know, he came up through the 50s and 60s and has seen a lot of the, you know, the country rise and fall, and seen the different policies and how it's affected the economy and the standard of living in this country and stuff. And I think he wants to take it back to a time to where, you know, everybody had a shot at a piece of the pie. And, you know, like I said, I hope the best for any president. I would, you know, I hoped Obama would do really good things and stuff. And, boy, he just didn't do as well as I would have liked him to do. And there was things, you know, he did, like the Obamacare. And people say, oh, don't call it Obamacare. That was the National Affordable Care Act or whatever. Affordable Care Act, you know. And it's like, well, he's the one that said, you know, my rates wouldn't go up and I'd keep my doctor and all that. And next thing I knew, I'm paying $800 a month for medical insurance. So, I don't think he did that great a job. And he seemed more, you know, and then he boycotted going to the Olympics because the Russians were cracking down on the homosexuals in Russia. You know, it's like, really? That's what you care about? So, you know, and then the concern, you know, you seem more concerned, like the Democratic Party does right now, more concerned with foreign nationals, non-citizens, than they do with citizens. And I think that's the point Trump's trying to make is, look, your job is to care about the people of this country. It's the politicians of Mexico are supposed to care about Mexicans. You understand? You know, and yet all the ire and blame is put on this country. It's like, you people need to go take a look at Mexico. What is the root cause of the problem? What is it about Mexico that makes its people want to flee the country? Why can't we address that? Tell the Mexican government to address that instead of dumping it all in our lap. There's nothing on my birth certificate that says I am responsible to support foreign nationals from the nation of Mexico who come to this country illegally. There's nothing in the Constitution that says our politicians are to care more about foreign nationals from the nation of Mexico than they do us. And that's what the left has to get through their head, or they're going to, you know, they're going to implode on themselves anyway with these Looney Tune ideas, socialism and stuff. But the way things are going, I wouldn't doubt someday the country goes that way. Maybe it'll take sinking that low before people really wake up and raise their voices. But the sad thing is that I think at that point, you know, it might be come to a point of civil war in this country. So, and that's what another thing when I say, you know, we can't let the government go unbridled with foreign policy and all this and everything, because maybe if we don't stop causing civil wars and conflicts in other parts of the world for this nation building and stuff, it'll come back on us. You know, you know, what goes around comes around. You want to go causing civil wars around the world and stuff? Well, don't start crying when it happens here. You never know. So I think next 20 years, like I said, this country is going to be pivotal. We need to stop being at each other's throats and get to work. Let's just, you know, one step at a time here. Let's get the tax code under control, so that, you know, the lower incomes and stuff aren't paying. You know, like I said, until like you reach whatever the amount is. We figure, you know, what do they give you now? 11,000, 10,000, 9,000 to write off. I think that's too low as a personal exemption, because you can't live off of $9,000 a year in this country. So I think that ought to be higher. Like I said, maybe not start taxing people to $30,000. You know, and then it's the same rate. You know, it's you know, from 30 to 31. You know, or maybe you start at 20 or 25. You don't tax anybody, but whatever it is, you know, say you start at 20. So 20 to 21,000 would be 0.01%, and then you just go up the scale. Every $1,000 is another 0.1%. So when you reach 30,000, you're at 1%. 40,000, you're up to 2%. You know, because right now it's higher than that. Right now, I think all you got to do is be above 50 or 60, and you're already up there to 12 or 13. I think that should be cut in half. Remember when that guy Herman Cain was running for president? He had that 999 deal. That's too high. That is too freaking high. You know, just absolutely ludicrous. We should not be paying that much in taxes, because we have a lot of use taxes that pay for a lot of the other things. We had, you know, you got fuel taxes and all this. They're supposed to be paying for the highways and stuff. You know, and a lot of the reasons why our taxes are so high, is you look at the Federal Reserve, is to pay the interest to the Federal Reserve. There's some videos. I forget if I moved any of them to my channel, but they're by Mike Maloney, Hidden Secrets of the Federal Reserve and the Banking System and all this and everything. We didn't even have a federal income tax until they established the Federal Reserve in this country. And the reason they established the income tax was because they were going to pay interest to this damn central bank that has nothing to do with the government. It's a private bank, has private holders. So you got these bankers getting rich and rich and rich, and some of them aren't even American citizens. Super rich. You know, our Treasury prints the money, gives it to them, they distribute it out through the banking system, and then we have to pay taxes so that the government can pay them interest on money it borrows back from them. And it's like, wait a minute, who came up with this scheme? You know, and the founding fathers all said, you know, if you do the centralized bank thing, you're doomed. And this guy Mike Maloney, with his videos about money, goes through back to like the Roman Empire and the study of money and stuff, and how it affected these other empires and stuff. And that's the thing about the founding fathers. They were well-read men. They were historians and you know, teachers and things, and they knew of world history and of money and you know, the different types of governments and things like that, and what worked and what seemed to work and what didn't seem to work, and all these things, and you know, and the relationship with, you know, the monarchy of Britain and stuff had a lot to do with the way our Constitution was written and stuff, and you know, giving us certain rights that weren't allowed, you know, under them, and a whole slew of things that they wrestled with and thought about and tried to figure out how to write it upright, and so it would be, you know, plain to understand, you know, that we're going to found this country as a constitutional republic. Yes, it has democratic principles, but it's not a full-blown democracy. That's not how our government's supposed to work. Is a full-blown democracy in that respect, where the people vote on every single little thing and stuff. And like Benjamin Franklin said, democracy is two wolves and a lamb deciding what's for dinner. You got to look at it that way. You're supposed to vote for the people who you think are the best capable of deciding important issues for the country and for your community, and so on and stuff. And one of the reasons why they get away with not making the best decisions is because all the money goes to Washington. They go to Washington, they forget about everything else. If the money, the tax system was the other way around, where and I'm saying the tax levels both need to be low, but if your federal tax was less than what you paid to your state, and you demanded more accountability for that money, to your representatives right there in your state and everything, they couldn't run off to Washington and hide from you. You're gonna be in their face right there and then. Hey, either you get rid of this program and cut the taxes, or whatever it is, or no, you're not going to start something like that and raise our taxes. I think there would be a lot more people who would take part in the system as far as the budget goes and things like that, if they could confront on their home ground, if they could see where the money's going and confront the people in charge of the money right there in their state and everything. Like I said, the money goes to Washington, they all go to Washington, and you're not going to get a hold of them there. So I think you would have more concern and voice more opinions and demand more explanations from the politicians. If instead of your money magically vaporizing into this huge federal system, it was going right to your state, and it was your state politicians in charge of the expenditures and stuff, and you could grill their asses right there and then. Because once it goes to Washington, it's like, well, kind of got caught in a big federal mix there, and can't really control that. That's what you're going to tell you. Well, the rest of Congress passed that. I didn't vote for that. Whatever. As you're going right to your state, guess what? You got the person who's making decisions with the money right there. He's your representative, and your little bit of money that goes to Washington for an income tax. Washington will just have to get their actions back to the basics of the Constitution and only raise money for those things that they need and are given the specific duties of taking care of, and not all these other programs that they throw out there, and all these other agencies and the hundreds of thousands, if not, I think there's a couple million people on the federal government payroll, and not to mention all the corporations and contractors and shit like that they dole money out to. So I think it'd be a lot better if your money stayed right there in your state, and the people who were in charge of your taxes and what they spend it on were right there, and you could hold them accountable for it. And I think we need to do that, and some other things, and get this country back to meat and potatoes, and let people be able to have a little more control and hope for the future for their families, being able to provide for their families and for their their old age and things like that, instead of being on pins and needles worrying when the bottom's going to drop out all the time. All right. I think that's everything I wanted to recap on this one. Pretty sure. Anyway, that'll do it for this. Have a good evening. Remember, there's no greater thing that you can say than there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Peace. Have a good one.